In this video we're going to have a look at adjusting sharpening in Element 6 using the Enhance Adjust Sharpness filter. And let's stick with a macro shot because macro photographs are always a challenge. You'll find that on the cover disc. Go to Macro. If it opens it up in the raw editor, don't worry, we're not going to use the sharpening tools there. Just open it up in Photoshop itself by clicking Open Image. And here we have the standard Photoshop editor. Now here we have our macro shot, and a lot of it is actually deliberately out of focus because it's a very shallow depth of field. That's very typical to macro. Using a wide aperture setting, it's very easy to get this kind of selective focus effect. And so we don't want to sharpen everything. We don't want to bring out lots of grain and noise in these nice soft background areas. We just want to make these a little bit crisper in the foreground. And it's a good idea before you actually start sharpening things to have a quick look at the metadata associated with the image. So if you go to File Info and then click on Camera Data 1, you can see things like the f-stop that was used. So we've got 6.3, which is very wide, and that's why we've got a shallow depth of field. But also ISO is really good to look at when you're going to sharpen something, because a higher ISO value is going to give you much grainier looking pixels, and that can get enhanced or exaggerated when you sharpen. But 200 is not too bad, though I think we'll still have a bit of a battle on our hands not to increase the strength of that grain. So click OK, and let's start to sharpen using Adjust Sharpness. And you'll find that by going to Enhance, I go to Adjust Sharpness down the bottom, and up pops this dialog box. And there's a default setting here. You can see a difference already by clicking to see the original, unclicking to see the sharpened version, and already you can see that the grain in that shot has been enhanced. Let's just do that over here as well. So there's the before, unclick, there's the after. So we've got a bit of grain on our default settings. Now a little bit of grain is not too bad. We just want to get these pixels looking crisper without adding too many artifacts. Now I've talked about artifacts in our raw tutorial, but if you've not watched that, I'll just show you what I mean by typical sharpening artifacts. Let's just go crazy and whack the amount right up to a very high setting, and you can see that there's a darker edge around here. Now that's how sharpening works. It increases the contrast around the edge of a pixel, and that can create very dark halos like this. It can also burn out highlights. Let me just increase radius. Now radius spreads the contrast amount out further from each pixel. You get a wider band of contrast, and that should create much thicker, really over the top there, but that's a much thicker line. In fact, it's too thick to show you the halos. Let's go down to about there. 3.2, yeah, you've got even darker, blacker halos around the edge there. And also, you're burning out some of the highlights, the brightest pixels in the shot as well, and that's another artifact created by sharpening. So we've got halos, we've got enhanced highlights, and we've got more noticeable grain as well because of the increased contrast. And by increasing contrast in an image, you create the illusion of sharpness because you show more detail, and the eye just thinks, oh, that's more in focus. But it's not really as good as getting in focus in the first place using your camera. So obviously I've gone over the top there and created a very dramatic amount setting of 296%, far too much. So let's whack that down to something a little bit more than the 100% default, about 127. And let's have a quick look at the before. That's very soft. But there's the after with a little bit of haloing there. So let's take radius down to 2. And really you don't want to go too far above 2, otherwise you will start to add artifacts like the ones we've just seen. So there's before and there's the after. Still could be a little bit of a halo here, and we're using the same algorithm, the sharpening algorithm, as you use in the unsharp mask at the moment because we're using Gaussian blur. But if you want to create a finer looking shot with more edge detail without as many halos, then try a lens blur. That's a different processing algorithm, and that has actually softened those halos up nicely, so it's well worth using if detail is important to you. And it's a good idea as well to view at 100% because you can really see any artifacts that you're going to add. But if we zoom out, we should still see a difference. There's the before, there's the after. We just lifted out a little bit of the detail that was missing here. Before and after, and because we've used the lens blur algorithm, it's actually got rid of a lot of the grain in the background there, so it's actually looking much smoother in the background, but yet we've got the foreground revealed. So So lens blur is really good at avoiding too much grain and removing halos, but yet revealing detail. And finally, you can also remove motion blur. This doesn't really work too well, but if you found you had a wobbly camera and it's blurring, say, from this angle here, you can try and set the angle accordingly to try and shift the pixels and reduce the blur. I don't tend to find that that works too well. And more refined, let's just go back to lens blur. Takes a longer time to process, but it gives you more subtle and better results. Let's just go up to 100% again, before and after.